tripartite system of checks and balances that we got from the founding fathers in this country, if you're going to have someone who says, you know, there are parts of the Constitution that must be terminated, if you're going to have somebody who calls himself a king and who says elections don't count unless he wins them, if you're going to have an overthrow of the constitutional republic in favor of all power consolidated in one man who says term limits don't apply to him and Congress and the courts don't constrain him and all the rest of it, if you're going to do it, if you are going to abolish the American form of government in favor of an autocratic and unopposed rule by one man, you better be good at it. Am I right? You know, he better be compos mentis, on the ball. If you're going to, like, overthrow 250 years of who we are as a country to instead just be like, l'état, c'est you. Like, if we're just going to have it be that one dude, you just hope that dude is with it, right? Or instead, you could have what we have. On Monday this week, President Donald Trump went to the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., where he has recently fired the entire board and appointed himself as the new chairman. While skulking around that national cultural treasure on Monday, where he now personally intends to choose awardees. So get ready for a lot of, you know, Kid Rock and children's choirs who sing songs about the greatness of Donald Trump. While he was skulking around the halls of the Kennedy Center on Monday, President Trump, on Monday, announced, surprise, that the very next day, he would be releasing all files related to the investigation of the assassination of President John F. Kennedy in 1963. All files on this subject with no redactions would be released the next day, on Tuesday. And so, because he said so, and what else is government other than just whatever Donald Trump says? Because he said so, the National Archives on Tuesday, in fact, posted online over 60,000 pages of government documents on this subject. So he says it on Monday. They posted this stuff on Tuesday. Now, it's Friday Eve now, right? It's Thursday night. For all the conspiracy theories and drama that we as a country have built up around the JFK assassination in the past 60-plus years, ask yourself this. Over the last couple of days, have you, like, heard anything in the news? Have you seen any big headlines about the amazing revelations in these documents? Have you seen news stories about how, wow, these new documents finally shed new light on the assassination, or that, you know, some previously unknown fact about it has been revealed and this changes everything? Have you seen any news stories like that? No, you have not. And that is because the documents that genius Donald Trump insisted on Monday had to be released on Tuesday, those documents were almost entirely documents that had been previously released to the public under President Joe Biden when he released a bunch of them, under other presidents who had released other stuff. Almost all of this stuff had previously been released anyway. But this was a little different, right? Because Donald Trump, genius, insisted that the documents he was ordering to be released, these documents would have to be unredacted. He made that explicit in his order. Totally unredacted, nothing crossed out. And so, on his orders, they released all of these documents that had been previously released, except this time they had nothing crossed out, nothing redacted. And it turns out, you know what had been redacted the other times they had released these documents? You know what had been under those black boxes in previous releases of these same documents? You know what was under the Sharpie scratch-outs on all these pages? Turns out what had been redacted was the Social Security numbers and birth dates of tons and tons of random people who worked for the government around the time that the Kennedy assassination was being investigated. Ta-da! So that is what he has ordered released. That's the big revelation from Donald Trump. Headline: White House seeks to contain damage from personal data in Kennedy files. Headline: Social Security numbers and other private information unmasked in JFK files. These geniuses, these big brains, Among the people who Donald Trump has just doxed by publishing his full and unredacted Social Security number for no reason at all is his own lawyer, Joe diGenova, who worked for the Trump campaign and who represented Trump on some of the weirdest Russia and Ukraine stuff. In the Washington Post, quote, former Trump campaign lawyer Joseph diGenova, age 80, whose private information was included in the release, said, quote, it's absolutely outrageous. It's sloppy, unprofessional. diGenova continued, quote, it's like a first grade elementary level rule of security to redact things like that. First time in my life I've ever knowingly agreed with Joseph diGenova. But that's just the start. The Washington Post further discovered that Donald Trump, in his infinite wisdom, has just published the full, accurate, and complete, quote, Social Security numbers, birthplaces, and birth dates of not just random people, including his own lawyer, but, quote, more than 100 staff members of the Senate Church Committee and more than 100 Social Security numbers of staff members of the House Select Committee on Assassinations, which investigated the killing of John F. Kennedy. Now, awkwardly for Trump in terms of what he has wrought here, and awkwardly for the rest of us because of the grammar involved, the Post also has to sort of gingerly note that many of these staff members of the Assassinations Committee are themselves still alive. Right? I mean, just because they were on the Assassinations Committee doesn't mean they're not still alive and kicking. And now Donald Trump has ordered all of them to be very thoroughly doxxed, which, among other things, appears to be quite illegal. Both the Washington Post and the New York Times spoke with experts who told them that this very well looks illegal. What Trump just did here appears to pretty bluntly violate U.S. privacy law. At least one person who had his or her Social Security number published by Trump has started discussing bringing a lawsuit against the government for having done this. Probably pretty good grounds to do that. It's also helpful to keep in mind who exactly we're talking about here, right? If these people were Senate staff members and House Select Committee staff members in the 1960s and 70s on committees that were doing intelligence investigations and the investigation of the Kennedy assassination and the investigation of the investigation, I mean, people doing that kind of work in government in the 60s and 70s, well, a lot of those people stayed in government or in public service, and that was one step in what turned into a very impressive career in public service, right? A lot of these people ended up later on in their life with very impressive, very important jobs. The people who Trump just doxed include this list. I mean, this is from the Washington Post again. Quote, many whose Social Security numbers were exposed had become high-ranking officials in Washington. They include a former Assistant Secretary of State, former U.S. Ambassador, researchers in the intelligence world, State Department workers, and prominent lawyers. The Post was first to report that this is what Trump did. The New York Times adds this tonight, quote, White House officials acknowledged today that it was only after the papers were made public that they began combing through them for exposed details. Only after they were made public. So Trump was bumbling around in the halls of the Kennedy Center, being a genius, when he announced, when he blurted out Monday, apparently with no planning anywhere else in the government, when he just blurted out that the Kennedy assassination records will be released tomorrow. Because he said it, and that's how the government works now, they then released the documents the next day, Tuesday, and then, quote, on Wednesday, the day after that, that's when the White House ordered that the pages be combed for exposed Social Security numbers, which of course had already been published by the hundreds. Now, after that ready, fire, aim routine, they're now trying to fix it. The White House has now, quote, directed the Social Security Administration to issue new Social Security numbers to the affected people in an extraordinary response to mitigate the potential harm of the disclosures. They will also be offered free credit monitoring. So yeah, good luck, ambassadors and assistant secretaries of state and high-end Washington lawyers, including some who worked for Trump. Good luck in your 70s and 80s, now working with the hugely diminished and unbelievably chaotic Social Security Administration to restart in your 70s and 80s everything in your official and financial life with your brand new Social Security number that Donald Trump is having to issue you today as an old person, as if you were a brand new baby. And he has to do that because Donald Trump just published your full name, your birthday, your place of birth, and your unredacted Social Security number on a government website. Because what? Who's going to tell him no? Who's going to tell him that's not a good idea? And that actually is the most amazing part of all of this, because it does not actually appear to have been a mistake. It's not like they didn't see it coming, and so they were surprised when it happened. Look at this from the Times reporting tonight. Quote, administration officials knew before the documents went out that releasing them without redactions would expose some personal information. They knew before the documents went out, but they did it anyway because he's the king. And what, you're going to tell him the genius brain fart he had about Kennedy while he was walking around the Kennedy Center is somehow not the world's greatest and well thought out idea? Who around him is going to be like, sir, It's not how the government works in an autocratic system, right? Asked about the debacle, the White House press secretary gave reporters this statement, quote, President Trump delivered on his promise of maximum transparency. Yes, he did. And the maximum transparency here is like if jeans came in clear and nobody had underwear anymore. Yes, it's maximum transparency. I'm not sure that's good. He definitely delivered. Yeah, and who were you or anyone else to question the inherent genius of every impulsive blurt of the 70-whatever-year-old God King who rules without restraint and without any checks and balances and without anyone anywhere near him who ever suggests the word no, let alone pronounces it? Geniuses. Anyway, that's how conscientious they are about the sensitive, personally identifiable information of a lot of really influential people, including one of Trump's own Fox News-ready lawyers. And if they're that conscientious about those folks personally identifying information, guess how conscientious they are about yours? Today, a U.S. federal judge in Maryland ordered Trump to get Elon Musk's so-called Doge effort out of the Social Security Administration. Because, yeah, turns out, guess what they were doing in there? This is from the judge's ruling issued today at 2:12 p.m. Eastern Time. Quote, the Doge team is essentially engaged in a fishing expedition at Social Security based on little more than suspicion. It has launched a search for the proverbial needle in the haystack without any concrete knowledge that the needle is actually in the haystack. Quote, to facilitate the expedition, members of the Social Security Doge team obtained unbridled access to the personal and private data of millions of Americans, including but not limited to Social Security numbers, medical records, mental health records, hospitalization records, driver's license numbers, bank and credit card information, tax information, income history, work history, birth and marriage certificates, and home and work addresses. And yet, the, quote, so-called experts on the Doge team never identified or articulated even a single reason for which the Doge team needs unlimited access to Social Security's entire record systems, thereby exposing personal, confidential, sensitive, and private information that millions of Americans entrusted to their government. Indeed, the judge continues, the government has not even attempted to explain why a more tailored, measured, titrated approach is not suitable to the task. Instead, the government simply repeats its incantation of a need to modernize the system. Its method of doing so is tantamount to hitting a fly with a sledgehammer. So this is the judge's ruling today. The judge ordered that as of right now, DOJ is hereby kicked out of all Social Security systems that contain any personally identifiable information. DOJ is not allowed to retain any such information they, quote, obtained, derived, copied, or exposed from any Social Security system. They're required to delete all personally identifiable information they obtained, directly or indirectly, from any Social Security system going back to Inauguration Day on January 20th. They must remove any software they installed on any Social Security system, and they cannot change any Social Security systems or alter any software code in anything at that agency. So ordered as of today. And this is another one of those circumstances, which we're kind of getting used to, in which the court's remedy is heartening. Oh, it seems good that they're stopped from doing all those things, but the reason it was needed is the opposite of heartening, right? I mean, what Trump gave Musk and the Doge kids at Social Security, look at that list again of what the judge has just told us they had access to. Quote, this is non-anonymized, specific, personal and private data of millions of Americans, including but not limited to our Social Security numbers, our medical records, our mental health records, our hospitalization records, our driver's license numbers, our bank information, our credit card information, our tax information, our income history, our work history, our birth certificates, our marriage certificates, and our home and work addresses. That's what they were amassing on us at Social Security. And none of us had anything to do with shooting JFK or even looking into it. This was the steps of the Colorado State Capitol today, as Donald Trump signed an executive order to abolish the U.S. Department of Education. All across Colorado, demonstrations held today to stand up for education. Another big protest at UC Berkeley today, also to stand up for education against the assault on it by Donald Trump and his administration. There were also protests at high schools and at middle schools today, really all across the country.
The rally here at Wise High School was part of a larger nationwide call to action.
Are we going to allow our society to decline? No!
This gathering took place at Tacoma Park Middle School in Montgomery County. Organizers say this is just the beginning, and they're asking everyone to get involved. Attend rallies, town halls, contact your lawmakers on Capitol Hill. Anything that can be done in the defense of public education. Megan McGrath, News 4.
That was Maryland, the shots from those last protests there. Elsewhere in Maryland today, in Silver Spring, people protested to defend NOAA and the National Weather Service at their headquarters building as Trump continues to fire people by the hundreds and now the thousands at NOAA, decimating that agency. Outside an appearance by Florida Republican Governor Ron DeSantis and Trump's so-called border czar Tom Homan today, people protested in the street against Trump's anti-immigrant policies and arrests. This was in Sarasota, Florida. All over the country today, there were protests to stand up for the U.S. Post Office, which Donald Trump and his top campaign donor, Elon Musk, say they plan to privatize. These protests today in Washington, D.C. and Tampa, Florida, Jacksonville, Florida, in Los Angeles, where Congresswoman Maxine Waters showed up and joined the protesters, in Charlotte, North Carolina, in Albuquerque, New Mexico. They had a big turnout for their protests there to defend the post office today. Same with the one in St. Louis, Missouri. They were chanting, U.S. mail, not for sale. There was a big protest to defend the post office today in New York City. And there were a bunch of these protests in Texas as well, including this one in San Antonio, and this from Dallas-Fort Worth.
Happening right now, North Texas U.S. postal workers are rallying against what they say is the most serious threat in their 250-year history. It's in response to the Trump administration looking to privatize the Postal Service.
The USPS was launched in 1776 and is enshrined in the Constitution. Only Congress has the authority to change its structure. That is why the postal workers are calling on lawmakers in Washington and the public to reject privatization efforts and protect what they're calling a vital public service. This is just the start. More rallies are planned for the U.S. Postal Service as the future of this agency remains uncertain this year. Reporting live in Dallas, Alana Quillen, NBC5.
Members of Congress are on recess this week, which means many of them are back home in their home districts. And that means they're angry and worried, and weirded out constituents are demanding to talk with them about what's going on in Washington and around the country. We're going to be speaking tonight with Minnesota Democratic Governor Tim Walz. He's here live. He's been busy, among other things, holding town halls in the congressional districts of Republican members of Congress who won't do it themselves. That continues to be a theme. In Boardman, Ohio, constituents of Republican Congressman Michael Ruley held a protest yesterday demanding that he meet up with them and that he stand up to Trump. In Western New York, constituents of Republican Congressman Nick Langworthy held a town hall with an empty chair representing their congressman, since they say he won't hold any in-person town halls with them himself. Same thing when it comes to Republican Congresswoman Elise Stefanik. Her constituents held an empty chair town hall for her as well in Rome, New York. We saw the same thing in the great state of Maine, where there was quite big turnout yesterday at a town hall for, but not with, Republican Senator Susan Collins. She did not attend, but lots of her constituents did. The organizers did put a big blow-up mounted flattering photo of her headshot at the front of the room, to which they addressed their questions and their anger.
Duck Walk by Ariel Williams. Henrietta Wilkins rushes to church one Sunday morning, accidentally leaving her gate open. Her duck, Duckwisha, seizes the chance to take her 5 ducklings to the local pond. Along the way, the ducklings fall into a manhole, causing a town-wide rescue effort. After a frantic search, Duckwisha finds her ducklings safely swimming in the pond, and the heartwarming story makes local news. Meanwhile, Henrietta realizes her mistake and panics, but the firemen reunite her with Duckwisha and her ducklings, bringing a happy ending to their adventure.
Get your digital copy today at lulubooks.com and experience the adventure in EPUB or PDF format. Make sure you have a compatible reader to dive into this unforgettable journey. Don't miss out, unlock the secrets, and let the story begin.
Appetite for destruction. In the year 2032, the world teetered on the brink of disaster as humanity faced a nightmare no one could have foreseen. Food, the very thing that sustained life, had turned into a weapon of terror. It all began in a remote factory in China, shrouded in smoke and shadows. Rows upon rows of vegetables grew in eerie greenhouses, their leaves trembling under artificial lights. Workers moved through the rows, their expressions tense. Whispers filled the factory. Something was wrong with the crops. Lee WEI, a seasoned worker, approached a row of tomatoes, each fruit unnaturally large and almost translucent. As he reached out, one of the tomatoes suddenly lurched forward, releasing vine-like tendrils that wrapped around his wrist, pulling him into its soft, pulpy flesh. Lee's scream was swallowed by the shadows as the tomato consumed him.
Don't forget to download a free EPUB reader at Google Play Store.
For more, click Linktree and
En el pequeño y encantador pueblo de Springfield, Ohio, vivía una regia poodle estándar llamada Bella. Bella pertenecía a la señora von Thorsenberg, una figura bien conocida en la comunidad, siempre elegante, conservadora en sus modales, pero demócrata de toda la vida. Durante años, organizó reuniones elegantes, se involucró en la política local y trató su hogar como un reino. Recientemente, sin embargo, las cosas habían cambiado. La señora von Thorsenberg había estado viendo mucho Fox News, y eso parecía haber cambiado su forma de pensar. Ya no era la demócrata que defendía las causas comunitarias, en cambio, se había convertido en una ferviente partidaria. Para más información haga clic en el enlace del árbol en el perfil.
The Park of Secrets.
In the year 2060, near the heart of Florida, just a stone's throw from Disney World, stood a theme park unlike any other, a place known as the House of Secrets. It was a magical park, much like a state fair, filled with towering rides, carnival games, and parades that drew people from all over the world. But among the grand Ferris wheel and the colorful day parade, there was one attraction that outshined them all, the parade princess, a mesmerizing mermaid named Kenya. Kenya was a sight to behold. At 22 years old, fresh out of college, she had the kind of beauty that drew people to her like moths to a flame. Her brown skin glowed under the park lights, her hair a stunning mix of purple and pink that cascaded over her shoulders. Little pink hearts adorned her cheeks, and a ribbon of color stretched across her nose. But it wasn't just her beauty that made her special. Her eyes, big and almond-shaped, seemed to capture the hearts of everyone who saw her.
For more, click tree link in profile.
Sable's Song, A Siren's Journey to Joy. Once upon a time, in a small, worn-out town in Middle America, there lived a little child named Sable. Born into poverty, Sable's body was frail, so thin that you could see her bones, but her heart was filled with an exuberance that not even hunger could dull. Sable was awkward, with dark, deep-set eyes that sparkled with innocence and wonder. Despite being born a boy, Sable always knew she was different. Inside her lived a girl, bright and effervescent, waiting to bloom.
Get your digital copy today at lulubooks.com and experience the adventure in EPUB or PDF format. Make sure you have a compatible reader to dive into this unforgettable journey. Don't miss out, unlock the secrets, and let the story begin.
The Baker and the Handyman's Sweet Connection. In a quaint village nestled in a picturesque valley, there stood a small house in the shape of a mushroom. This whimsical home belonged to a young boy named Jamie, barely out of high school, who had a passion for baking. Inside, his cozy kitchen was always filled with the sweet aroma of cakes, cookies, and all sorts of delightful treats. What made his creation special was that each of his cakes was shaped like tiny mushrooms, a nod to his quirky home. Jamie's baking became the talk of the town. From birthdays to celebrations, everyone in the village adored his sweets.
For more, click link in the bio.
I told you. What did I tell you? Didn't I tell you? 'Cause I told you. And when did I tell you? A long time ago. And what did I say will happen when I told you? Exactly what just happened.